Great Park City. Paul Eisenberg, traveling dad. I'm here with Chef Gerron Douglas of ATRIO. Hello, Chef. So, we are in the vicinity, if you don't know New York City, we're in the vicinity of the 9/11 Memorial, the Oculus, Freedom Tower. But the place to be is right here. We're at the Conrad New York Hotel at the ATRIO Wine Bar Restaurant. I wanted to get that part correct. I'm going to stop talking right now and turn it over to Chef Gerron. As you may have read in the blurb, we're going to do a cooking demo. We're going to have a nice little chat. Chef here is a father of two. So we're going to do a little bit of conversation about cooking for kids and that sort of thing. So thank you for joining us. We're going to get right into the cooking.
Certainly.
What do you have for us today?
So we're going to feature a couple of the dishes that we have on our menu. So the first dish that we're going to do is a breakfast item, very popular for us. It's our avocado toast. They give us a chance to do a technique that a lot of people might find difficult, which is poaching eggs. So we'll do that dish first. We'll follow that up with one of our more popular appetizers. It's our grilled octopus. So to give us a chance to feature some of the techniques of proper grilling, which some people do know, some people don't, since grilling is a popular pastime for quite a few people, especially dads, I know myself. And then we'll finish it up with doing one of our popular entrees, which is our roasted halibut, or our pan-seared halibut. And that way it'll give us a chance to do the technique of roasting in a pan. A lot of people find difficult being able to cook fish, like sticking and things like that. So we're going to kind of pull back the curtain on that and debunk that fish can't be cooked in a pan without it sticking. Sure. There are a bunch of things I'm sure a lot of us amateur chefs are doing wrong. And so as we go, by all means, please point out the things that I think you probably know a lot of us are doing wrong. Absolutely. Also, before we get started, very quickly, if you could just talk to us about ATRIO. Chef here has been with the restaurant less than a year. He has a long cooking career. He was with, if you just slip my mind. Sure. So prior to coming aboard with ATRIO, I've been here for about 8 months. Before that, I was the banquet chef for Union Square Hospitality Group, which operates the banquet space here in the hotel as well. Right. And then prior to that, I spent the better part of 10 years at the Waldorf Astoria here in New York, perfecting my skills between the banquet kitchen and all of the outlets, looking for various dignitaries, celebrities, and everyday travelers as well. Now that my memory is returned, you were sous chef and chef saucier. Is that correct? If you go to your LinkedIn profile, you'll probably see me stalking you there. So anyhow, impressive credentials. You started in Los Angeles, where you're from. Yes, correct. Yeah, so originally from Los Angeles. I worked in a few restaurants out in Los Angeles, and then decided to really take my career seriously and really turn my passion into a career. And so I attended culinary school there. I was a graduate of the Le Cordon Bleu program from the California School of Culinary Arts in Pasadena, California, and then made my way out to New York during an externship, and kind of never left. It became home, and so now New York is my adopted home away from Los Angeles. Thank you, Chef. You're welcome. So, without any further ado? Certainly. So, what we have here, we just, to speed up everything, we've laid out all of the mise en place, which is just a fancy term for all of our ingredients, right? So we've laid out all of our mise en place for the avocado toast, so that we can get started on that. Sure. And the first thing I'm going to do, just to make sure that everything kind of comes out at the same time, I'm going to start with poaching the eggs. Sure. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just take all of this, and we'll bring it over here to the hot line. Okay. And so what I've done is I've started a pot of water. Okay, one of the things with poaching eggs is you don't want the water to be boiling. It should be at a nice simmer. Okay, so the water should be warm with a few bubbles in it, but not really oil. The second we do, and there's a little tip, is that we add a little vinegar into the water, not enough to flavor the egg, but what happens when you add vinegar is that the acid helps to coagulate the egg and kind of bring it all together. Right? How much vinegar, like a teaspoon, a drop? We're probably about 2 teaspoons we probably have about a quart and a half of water in here. There's probably about 2 teaspoons of just plain white distilled vinegar. You don't want to use any other type of vinegar like a sherry or Chardonnay because there's too many, that flavor will dominate too much.
Gotcha.
So now that we have that, the next step is we take our egg and we're going to crack it into a separate container. Okay? One, that makes sure that we don't get any shells in there, and two, it makes it a little easier for putting the egg into the water.
When I first started poaching eggs, I thought you were supposed to break them directly into the water, but obviously that's a doomed task from the start.
To be honest with you, in a rush, sometimes we have to do that when we're very busy and we get behind a little bit. It can be done, but the proper technique is to crack into a vessel and then to slowly pour the egg into the water.
Sure.
Okay. So now that we have the water here, what you want to do is, if I were to pour the egg directly in, the egg would kind of just go all over the place, right? And so thinking ahead of how we want the presentation to be, one of the techniques that we do when we're poaching eggs is we create a vortex, or we swirl the water, okay? And so what we do is we start with the water, okay?
Wow, we've got science in this show.
And once we get it going, then we gently pour the egg into the water. And what you'll see is as that egg is swirling around, it really keeps the egg tight so that when it finishes poaching, you have a nice, beautifully shaped egg versus the egg whites kind of being all over the place.
Right.
Okay? So I'm just going to add one more in so that we have a complete dish.
May I ask you a parenting question while we're doing this?
Absolutely.
So you have a 6-year-old.
I do. Morgan.
Fussy eater?
She is she can be a very particular eater. If it's something that she likes, she'll eat 3 portions of it if you let her. But if it's something, new or something that she doesn't particularly care for, she won't touch it. So we have to be my wife and I are very mindful of what she likes and trying to make sure that we are able to find something on the menu that she does. Your typical picky 6-year-old, yes, right. Definitely. Okay, so now that the vortex is kind of slowed down or stopped, you can see that the egg has a very nice shape to it. It'll make for a nice presentation. And at this point, I'm just going to create a second vortex and then add my other egg in. Okay.
By the way, behind the camera is Ildana Kurtovic. Did I get that right? Senior Marketing Manager at the Conrad New York. She very graciously is filming this so that we can move around the kitchen. By the way, this is a beautiful kitchen. If you just get an idea, if you come to the Conrad and come upstairs, you'll see ATRIO, and it's a beautiful space. So
what I'm doing is we do our avocado toast on a multi-grain bread. It's a whole wheat bread, and so I'm just adding it under the broiler just to toast it and give it just a little bit of texture.
Gotcha. So we were talking earlier, Chef, about food allergies.
Yes.
I was mentioning that 2 of my 3 children are food allergic, and you discovered that your 6-month-old also has an allergy.
Yes. So my wife and I discovered that our other daughter, Lauren, actually has a food allergy as well. In particular, there's a lactose allergy. So we're very familiar with understanding what parents go through who have children who have allergies. And nowadays in particular, so many kids are being diagnosed with allergies that we take it very serious, and we're very mindful of, not only children, but just guests in general who have allergies.
Right.
And we are as accommodating as possible when it comes to taking care of those guests.
Sure. And some of these things that you're showing us today are actually gluten-free?
Yes. So the first dish, the avocado toast, is not gluten-free, but the other 2 dishes are gluten-free without us having to alter them in any way from what is already written on the menu.
Sure.
We really try and take when I'm writing the menu, I try and take that approach to offer some of those gluten-free options in there that are gluten-free without our guests having to ask.
Sure.
Gluten-free is just such a common thing now, so we're really trying to accommodate.
Sure.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Does the chef worry about the 2 eggs cooking for different lengths of time?
I don't, because I'm mindful of the eggs when I put in, and as I'm coming out, I test the eggs just to make sure that they're at right. But great question, yes. I'm glad someone picked up on that. So, in particular, what we'll do is I'm going to take a look at these eggs now. Okay. So, you can see that the egg, just from experience, I've done this quite a few times, and so we can kind of just a quick feel how firm the whites are on the egg, and also where the yolk is as well. So the yolk is still nice and runny inside.
This is a quality assurance test you're doing here.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm going to leave that in there for just another minute.
Okay.
And then I'm going to check my other egg as well. Okay. And this one feels good. So this was the first egg that we put in. This one is done.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to, even though I have a slotted spoon, I'm going to drain it onto a paper towel, okay? Just to take out any excess moisture so that we don't water down our dish.
Sure.
Okay? This egg is good also, okay? And so we'll put that there.
Now, avocado toast has become quite the thing.
Yes.
How long has that been on the menu?
It's been on the menu now for about, this particular version of it has been on the menu for about 4 months now. And then prior to that, we had another version as well that was there for probably about a year.
Sure.
So we just kind of updated it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so now that our eggs are done, bring these over here, and now we'll go ahead and we'll plate up the avocado toast.
Sure.
So just to get a little bit ahead, we already have our avocado mix. Okay. And the avocado mix is just simply avocado that's been mashed, a little salt and pepper, and then just a very, very slight hint of lemon, just to keep it from really, turning color.
Sure.
So we're going to take our bread.
This is not me sliding the spoons into the frame, by the way. There are some very competent sous chefs here.
Okay, so take a generous amount of the avocado. Okay. Nice and healthy. And we're going to spread that onto the toast. And we want to just make sure that we cover all of the bread.
Sure. Chef, can you talk a little bit about your vision for ATRIO? Because again, you came in and you took over.
Certainly.
What are your goals for the restaurant, and if maybe you could tell people a little bit about the cuisine as you see it?
So our goal for ATRIO is to create a great dining experience for all of our guests that really speaks to local ingredients, seasonal options as well, with a little bit of a global influence. So being in New York, I think of New York as being like the capital, one of the capitals of the world. There's such a great mix of different cultures within New York. And so I'm really trying to shift that direction or that mix of cultures to speak to our menu. We do a little bit of American, we do a little bit of Mediterranean, we do a little bit of French, we have a little bit of a Spanish influence. And so we really, while we don't want to necessarily be all over the map in terms of what we offer, we still want to have a little bit of a world cuisine, but still having that local influence and that sustainable influence as well.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the direction that we're going.
Great.
So what we're going to do is we have these beautiful black plates. I like to do it on the black plate because it really makes everything kind of pop. Mm-hmm. And so what we'll do is, now that we have the toast, we're just going to kind of offset here, okay? And we're just mindful of leaving enough space for our eggs, okay? And so before we do that, the next component is we're going to add some pomegranate seeds to the dish. I think the pomegranate adds a nice texture and crunch to the dish, but the red also adds a really nice pop as well.
Sure.
Okay?
When you don't have someone constantly interrupting you like I am, from start to finish, how long does it take to put this dish together?
We can pick up this dish in about 3 minutes or so. Okay? So
Awesome.
1 egg here. Second egg here. Maybe we'll add just a few more pomegranate seeds there. Okay. And then we're going to garnish with a little bit of the ricotta salata cheese.
Okay.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is just kind of cut this down to make it a little bit more manageable for plating.
Now, assuming that I got the poaching right, if I were going to try this at home,
Yes.
Can you talk briefly about plating mistakes? Because I think people have in their heads from watching food TV that there's a certain way to plate. Do you have any tips for somebody who's really trying to make a nice impression?
2 tips, which are actually fairly simple. Adding some kind of fresh herb at the very end or some kind of green really will make your dish pop. And it's really an easy fix on that. Number 2 is that having a larger plate and a smaller portion. A lot of times I try and make the analogy. It's like framing a picture or framing a masterpiece, you know. And so when you have that large plate, really that negative space that the larger plate gives you almost creates a border around what you're doing, and it automatically just makes things look a lot nicer. And then if you don't have too much on your plate, if you have too much, it can really take away from the beauty of what you create. So
Sure.
those would be 2 quick tips that I could give in terms of plating.
Thank you, Chef.
So now that we have the avocado here, we're going to our watercress, our radish, and our ricotta salata salad. Okay. And we're just going to plate right over the top. Okay. Add that other component.
So what is in that dressing that you put in, which smells fantastic?
It's olive oil, sherry vinegar, and a little salt and pepper.
Yeah.
Very, very simple.
Very simple. It smells great.
Thank you. Okay. 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 And then what we'll do is we'll just give it, we'll take the corner of our towel, we'll give it a final little wipe. Just to take off any smudges that might have happened. Okay. And there you have it, our avocado toast.
Beautiful cook, Chef. So 3 minutes in the real world.
Yes.
Okay.
Literally while the eggs are poaching, by the time the eggs are done poaching, you've made the toast, put the avocado spread on, the salad on standby, and literally the eggs go from the towel right to the bread, salad would go on and go right to the table. Right. Yeah.
Excellent. So we're going to move on to a second dish. Now
Yep.
this, I'm assuming that these things are on your regular menu? Or?
They are on our regular menu.
Okay.
Yes. So we're going to step around to the grill. So our next dish is going to be our grilled octopus.
Sure.
And if you want to follow me. So welcome to the other side of our kitchen. We're on the saute side, we're now on the grill side. And so what we're going to start with is we have our Spanish octopus. And so what we do is we pre-cook the octopus the octopus needs to get tender, and so we braise the octopus in red wine, onions, garlic, carrots, aromatics to give it a lot of flavor, but to also tenderize the octopus. And then we simply just rewarm it and finish it on the grill. So that's what we have here. This is octopus that's already been cooked earlier today.
Okay.
Okay, and so what we're going to do is, one of the keys to successful grilling is that you need to put a little bit of oil onto whatever you're going to grill, and then you need to find a nice hot spot on the grill. So have a little bit of, this is just a little bit of blended oil. In something like this, you don't want to use olive oil because olive oil has a low smoke point. And so what will happen is if you apply that olive oil directly to the grill, yes.
We have one more question from John Vanda.
Okay.
How long do you braise the octopus for?
Typically, the octopus takes anywhere from like 2.5 to 2 hours and 40 minutes or so. But it all depends also on how large the octopus is. We usually get 6 to 8 pound Portuguese octopus. But depending on the size of the octopus, it really will add a little variable into the amount of time. And so what I'm going to do, great question by the way. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of oil.
So you said it was blended oil. What oil again?
It's canola oil, and then so it's a 75-25 blend. There is a little bit of olive oil in there, just for a touch of flavor, but not enough that it would worry about it burning on the grill.
Okay, so you kind of poured that on there. Cooking spray. Cooking spray, is that a way to go? Or
you could.
No?
You could definitely spray it. The key is you don't want to put too much oil on it or overspray it, because that'll produce flare up on the grill.
Sure.
So really what you want to do is just put a little bit of oil, and then from there you want to just kind of massage that oil.
Massage your octopus.
Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. And just kind of make sure that it's all coated, but that you don't want oil necessarily dripping off of the octopus.
Sure.
Okay? So from here, we're just going to add just a little bit of salt to the octopus. Okay? And then we're going to look for a hot spot. Okay? And every grill is different. So the key to finding the hot spot is you want to kind of run your hand to the grill, and when you get to that point where you can't hold your hand there for more than a second or two, bingo, you hit it. Okay? So on our grill, it's here. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is lay the octopus there. Okay? And you can see that it'll immediately start, there's a little bit of smoke that's starting to generate as that octopus is starting to grill up nicely.
Now, if I'm a home cook, I likely don't have a grill like this at home.
Certainly.
What are workarounds? Are those stovetop grills effective? Am I going to put it directly on the fire, or what am I doing?
You could definitely, a grill pan would work just fine. The key to it is you want to just let it get hot.
Okay.
And so if you had a grill pan that you could put on a burner, you just want to kind of crank that heat up and let it sit there for a few minutes. Don't worry about it getting too hot. Okay. You want to get it to a point, like if you had a pan like that, you want to get it to a point where smoke is coming off of it, like light amounts of smoke, but not where you're going to set off the fire.
Okay. How about outdoors? Is this something that could easily be done outdoors?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, if you were doing this, say, over like charcoal or like a charcoal type grill, that's going to be even better. Just going to give you that more flavor.
All right. And 4th of July, octopus.
Yes, definitely. So while our octopus is on the grill, you come over here. I'm going to start the accompaniment to it. So we serve our octopus in a Spanish style with some chorizo, some piquillo peppers, and some picante beans. So I'm just going to start that here in this pan. So I'm going to start by rendering a little bit of chorizo.
If you're just joining us, by the way, I'm with Gerron Douglas, executive chef at the Conrad New York, and we're at the, am I pronouncing it correctly, ATRIO?
ATRIO.
ATRIO. I think I've been saying ATRIO. It's ATRIO Wine Bar and Restaurant. Chef also oversees the Loopy Doopy Rooftop Bar, which is closed for the season.
Opens April 1st.
What?
April 1st.
April 1st is open.
Yes.
Loopy Doopy is fun to say, by the way. Fun fact, I believe the name is derived from a huge painting we've got on the property.
Yes.
Okay.
It's part of an art installment in our atrium in the lobby, and so it spans the entire length of the space. So it goes up the installment all width, the art is all width, and then where the creation was moved.
We have another question from Kim Orlando. She said, I ate there in the fall and wherever else this one token. What's he planning for his spring wine menu?
So, great question. We're really looking to focus on a lot of seasonal items, in particular, great seasonal spring vegetables. So I'm currently working on a lot of stuff with morel mushrooms, fiddlehead ferns, ramps, peas, things of that nature. And between myself and our food and beverage director, Max Harris, we're actually in the process of sampling some wines that will pair nicely with those. So more to come on that, but great question. Definitely some stuff in the works. So while we're rendering out our chorizo, I'm just going to slide over for a second.
Okay.
Right? And I'm going to just flip over the octopus.
About how many minutes since I've been on one side?
I would say it's been on there probably about 3 minutes or so. And you can see now we have some nice grill marks starting to develop on the octopus. Okay. And so now that the chorizo is rendered out, I added a little bit of that same blended oil just to kind of start to build chorizo flavored oil.
And that's 75% olive, 25% olive?
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Then from there, I'm going to add in some of my other ingredients. So these are the gigante beans.
Those are huge.
That's why they're called gigante. Right? So we're going to add that in. We're also going to add in a little bit of fingerling potato. These potatoes have already been blanched, so they're already cooked. And we're just going to warm them up and kind of rewarm them in all of that chorizo flavor as well.
Kim has another question. Is this something that you make for your kids?
No, but I do make it for my wife. She's a big fan of the octopus. My daughter has not gotten adventurous enough to try the octopus, but it's funny, when I was a kid, I was the same way. Dad was a big octopus fan, and he used to try and get us to try octopus when we were a kid, but could never quite get there. So.
Well, Kim touches on an interesting point, which is, I think, something probably a lot of chefs get asked, is when you're off duty, when you're home, and you just want something quick and easy, what are some of your go-to dishes for yourself and your family?
Sure. So surprisingly, my wife does a majority of the cooking at home because I keep quite long hours.
Sure.
But some of our go-to dishes are very, very simple. It's usually rice and like a grilled chicken or some fish, some salad, somewhere along those lines. When we do have time, I am a big fan of oxtail, which is, I don't get as much time as I'd like to, but oxtail, and especially like macaroni and cheese, just something I've always, since a kid, I was just a huge fan of. So
Sure.
those are some of our go-to items. Then of course, a good old box cereal that hurt either.
Absolutely.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the octopus, and we actually keep a little bit of a marinade here right off of the stove, and this is just a little bit of the blended oil, some sherry vinegar, and some crushed red pepper flakes. It really adds a nice touch to the octopus. And so I'm just going to take that octopus, and this is where the fun part happens. Right? I'm going to kind of just dip that in there, and then I'm going to go a little bit of a flare up. I'm not too worried about it flaring up too much because it's going to kind of flame out in just a second, so I'm not too worried about it charring. Okay. And if it does kind of do that, you can always just take it and just move it a little bit. Okay. And what's nice is that the sugars inside of the vinegar kind of start to caramelize, and it really develops a little bit more of a complex flavor when you add that marinade right back to the dish. Okay. So while that's finishing up, we're just going to finish the rest of our dish here. And so we're just going to add in a little bit of celery here. And we're going to add in some piquillo peppers as well. And we'll just add that back.
If I don't have chorizo handy, what's a good substitution for this?
You could use pancetta. You could use bacon if you wanted to. I'd probably scale back. It's going to give you a little bit more of a smoky flavor. And aside from that, you could almost go without. You know, if you didn't want to have
I wouldn't want to, but yeah, sure.
if you didn't want to have like the meat or something like that. And what you do is just add like a little bit of smoked paprika to it, just to give you that like smoky background flavor that you would get from the chorizo.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay?
Great tip.
Now that we've got our accompaniment together, we'll just kind of leave that there.
Okay.
Okay? And we're just going to take that octopus. We're going to give it one more go around in that marinade. Okay?
So you've been a New Yorker for more than a decade now?
Yes.
From Los Angeles?
Originally from Los Angeles.
Perhaps the most controversial question I could raise is pizza. Can you get good pizza? So my phone just overheated, which is why the camera went. So we're going to just pick up where we were, hand the camera back to Dildana, and we will pick up with our octopus.
Okay. All right. We're back.
By the way, the camera overheated because it's so hot in here. I mean, not unpleasantly hot, but too hot for the Samsung. So what are you going to do?
So we've got our accompaniment together. We've got our octopus. So what we'll do is we'll step right over here to the gas and we'll plate up the dish.
Chef, we had another question before the phone shut down. Do you use any family recipes in your cooking?
I do. I don't make it often, but when I do my macaroni and cheese, it's one of the things I learned how to make from my grandmother, who was one of my inspirations for actually getting into cooking. And so, while it's not a written family recipe, it's something that was just kind of passed down from watching her do it so many times. And so, I take a lot of pride in that.
Aside from your grandmother, and that's a great point, who are some of your idols or tools as you were becoming a chef, becoming more established?
You know, I would say that I had 3 large influences outside of my grandmother. My 3 of the chefs that I work with at the Waldorf were very influential to me. The executive chef when I first started there, his name is John Doherty, was very influential to me. He taught me a lot about business. He taught me a lot about being that it's more than just cooking, about being showing your personality and letting that shine through your food and not compromising on the quality. So great mentor for me in terms of that. And then my other 2 mentors that really influenced me were Peter and Peter. So there was Peter Gutta and then Chef Peter Betts, both from the Waldorf. Both of them really are the ones who day in and day out kind of crafted me into becoming the chef that I am. So I owe those 3 a tremendous amount of gratitude. I give them a lot of credit. They also give me back the credit because they say I put in the hard work to get to where I am. But without them taking me under their wing, I can't say that I do stand there. All right, so we'll go ahead and plate this up. And so what I like to do is
So pretty big plate.
yes,
It is. Going back to what you were saying before.
just kind of frames out everything. So just want to make sure you get a little bit of everything down. I just added in a little bit of fresh herb right at the end that little bit of green really helps to make things pop. Okay. So we have our... Okay. So then we have our octopus here. Okay. And I'll just put it on this side because I'm right-handed, so I need to work from that side. Right. So what we'll do is we'll just take the octopus here, take one piece there.
Did the camera cut out in the middle of the LA pizza question? I'm not remembering that.
A little bit.
Okay, yeah, I think hackers probably came in and overheated my phone because I know it's a hot topic. But in terms of slices of pizza, where's your favorite slice of your pizza?
To be honest with you, it's Patsy's Pizza. They make a really good slice. You know, very Neapolitan style, just very thin crust, quick, plain, with fresh mozzarella, fresh tomato sauce. It's not like anything that you can get anywhere else. It's Patsy's, definitely.
Do you have pizza on the menu here?
We do. We have a beautiful hearth oven right behind us where we do pizzas for the restaurant and also for indoor dining. We make the dough in-house, all ingredients are made in-house. And while I won't say that I'm as good as Patsy's, we make a pretty good pizza. Yeah. So we have the octopus here, and so we kind of have it plated. And so what we'll do is, just to kind of finish it off, we're just going to garnish it with some, a little microgreen that we buy. It's called Hearts of Fire.
Hearts of Fire.
So it's a nice bright green, microgreen, but it's got a little nice like red veins running through it, with a very like neutral flavor as well, so it doesn't overpower the dish in any kind of way. And so less is a little bit more. So I'm only going to add 3. You always want to do things in odd numbers whenever you're cooking. Something about doing even amounts that doesn't look natural. So whatever you're doing, it should always be 3 or 5 or 7 or something like that. If you add 4, it just looks off. So we add those. And then just to finish off the dish, what I like to do is I reserved a little bit of the marinade here, and then I just pour just a few drizzles of the marinade back over the octopus. Just to, again, add a little flavor. And then to add a little bit of sheen to it as well, because we eat with our eyes first. Okay?
Oh, you sure do. That's beautiful.
And that's our Spanish octopus.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chef. So we have one more dish?
One more dish. And so we're going to do our roasted halibut. So I'm just going to grab the mise en place for that. Thank you. So I think my sous chef Juan has kind of sneaking kind of right around the back of the mise en place. Go ahead and back over. And so we're going to start with a stainless steel saute pan, heavy gauge bottom on that. Okay? And I'm going to put the pan on dry. So when you're cooking fish, very important that you have a clean pan, the pan is dry, and that you don't add the oil in yet. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the fire, I'm going to turn the heat up on that pan, and I'm going to let that get really, really hot. Having a hot pan is one of the 3 keys in order to having fish that doesn't stick. Okay, so while we do that, I'm just going to slide over and make sure that my oven is on.
Sure.
You'd be surprised how many times that'll happen. So,
I would think people would be afraid not to oil the pan.
yes.
So it'll be interesting to see here your technique.
Yes. So while the pan is getting hot, okay, we bring over our mise en place. Okay. And so for this dish, we have our 2 pieces of halibut. Okay, this is Atlantic halibut. We do its skin off on this, and we serve about a 6-ounce portion.
Okay.
So a couple of keys to having your fish not stick. Okay. Tip number 1 was to get the pan very hot, okay? Tip number 2 is your fish needs to be dry, okay? And so what we do is you take your fish, okay, and you just take a paper towel, okay, and you really want to just pat the fish dry, okay? That's the key to it, and you want to make sure that you get both sides.
It's about a half inch thick, these pieces, or more?
Yeah, I'd say about a half inch or so. It can vary depending on the size of the fish that we get in, but we tend to go for a 6-ounce portion.
Okay.
So we pat the fish dry, okay? Discard that. Now the next step is we're going to season our fish. Okay, so we're just going to add a little bit of cracked black pepper. Okay. Season both sides. Okay. Now the one thing you'll notice is I have not put salt on this yet. One of the keys to having fish that doesn't stick is you don't salt your fish until you're just about to put it in the pan. The reason behind that is that the salt, as soon as you salt something, it naturally starts drawing out the moisture. And so when you took the time to pat that fish dry, if I seasoned it now, it'll start releasing that liquid again, and then we're going to stick in there. Okay? So I have this seasoned, and I'm going to come back over to my pan, and you can see my pan is hot. I don't know if it's picking it up on the camera, but you can see where there's smoke coming off of a dry pan. Right. That's where you want to be. At this point, I'm going to add in my oil. Okay? We're going to do engine oil because we're cooking at a very high temperature. I'm going to add in my oil. Okay? And at this point, I normally wouldn't do it like this in the restaurant, but now I'm going to season my fish, and you can see that smoke that's coming off of there, okay? And then I'm going to lay it in and lay it away from me so that the flash doesn't come back if there was one.
That's a good test.
Okay? Now, I don't recommend this at home. I would use the spatula to hold the fish down, okay? We're a little bit of daredevil, so we kind of press it with our hand. And you want to press the fish for a few seconds until it releases. When it goes into such a high heat, it has a tendency to kind of curl up, and then you won't get an even sear. So you need to press it until the fish kind of releases itself or relaxes. Once it does that, you go back onto the fire.
Gotcha.
Okay?
So to recap, pan very hot.
Yes.
Oil right before you put the fish in.
Yes.
And do not salt it if you have to.
Until you're about to put it in the pan as well. Okay? Now, you can see, or you can't see, so I'll come back over here. You can see I'm at a point now where if I shake that pan, my fish has already released itself. It's already not going to stick, okay? At this point, I let my oven do the work. I take this fish, I don't turn it. I cook it all the way through on one side, okay? So I'm going to take this pan, we're going to go right in the oven, and we're going to leave it in there for about 8 minutes or so, okay? And that fish will be perfectly cooked through. You don't need to turn it. A big misconception is that you need to flip the fish back and forth, cook it on the other side. It cooks itself all the way through on that one side. Okay, and you'll see how it looks when it comes in. The difference in not cooking it. Okay, so while that's cooking, I'm just going to step back over here. I'm going to put together the rest of the dish. So this dish, speaking about the allergies that we talked about earlier. Yes.
One more question. What temp is the oven at?
Great question. And I get this question a lot. So at home, I would put that temperature of the oven at about 425 to 450. Okay? If you put it a little bit lower, it'll take a little bit longer to cook, but you're not going to get a nice color on your fish like you would when it comes out. Here in the restaurant, we have 2 temperatures on our oven, on or off. And so we really just kind of crank them up, and we kind of learn the timing of how it works. We don't really leave it at a set temperature. But for the home cook, 425 to 450 would be fine. Okay? So speaking about the allergies of this dish,
Yes.
this dish is actually gluten-free, and we you know, it's one of those things that it's a nice dish. It's gluten-free without trying to be gluten-free. So the components of this dish are some lentils de cuit, or French green lentils, which we already have pre-cooked here. We're going to use some exotic wild mushrooms. We have some shiitakes, some maitakes, and some hanshimiji mushrooms as well. Okay, some carrots, some asparagus, a little bit of applewood smoked bacon. Bacon always makes it better.
Yeah.
And then we'll finish it off with a little bit of fresh tomato as well.
Terrific. So this is halibut.
Sorry?
This is halibut.
This is halibut, yeah.
During the year, if you can't get halibut, what kinds of fish are you going to be substituting?
We've substituted with fluke. Recently we had a little bit of an issue getting halibut. There was some issues in the market with halibut, and so we substituted with fluke. But essentially any nice flaky white fish would work well. You could use a sea bass, fluke, really kind of whatever you want. This dish would actually even work with salmon if you really wanted. So we're just going to add in the asparagus.
Would the cooking time vary? I assume it would vary depending on what fish you're using.
It would. Usually with a white fish, those cooking times are very similar because there's not so much fat in them. So it cooks roughly about the same amount of time. Your salmon is going to take a little bit longer.
Okay.
But then it also depends on what temperature you want your salmon at as well. So we're just going to create a little fancy word for a mixture, okay, of these vegetables and lentils. We're just going to put that on with just a touch of stock, just to kind of rewarm it through, and then we'll be ready to plate.
Got it.
So.
Excellent.
Start the vegetable. And then we'll make sure that we season it so that it's good. Take a little salt.
Can I ask you about Bar Fairs, which opens in April? It's a rooftop bar, which is nice and open if you miss that part. Are there snacks so far? A menu and so forth?
We do. We offer a limited menu. Everything on there really is designed to be kind of a bar snack as opposed to a meal itself. So we don't do burgers and fries up there, but we do like room temperature sliders. We do cheese and charcuterie. We do like potato chips with the aioli for dipping, things along that. But our rooftop bar is very popular. We do a Prosecco and ice pop in Loopy Doopy, which is very popular. You go on our Instagram page, I'm sure you'll see thousands and thousands of pictures of it, but it does very well. Yeah.
So John would like to know, was the fish stock chicken stock or vegetable stock?
It was vegetable stock, yes. We don't use fish stock, or we don't use chicken stock in case someone is ordering the halibut and doesn't eat meat. So we're very mindful of that in keeping with people's dietary needs and kind of anticipating that as we go. Even though the dish does have pork in it, it does have the bacon, our servers really kind of address that right at the table and ask if pork is an issue. Yeah, and we can easily do it with that.
Thank you, John.
So our melanges kind of come together pretty quickly. It's really about just kind of rewarming it through. At this point, I'm just going to add in some fresh tomato, okay? And then we'll just set that back just to stay warm, okay? And we'll adjust down the temperature, okay? And then I'm just going to check on our fish.
Okay, so here's a question. I think I learned this from Alton Brown watching the shows. He says every time you open an oven, you lose 25 degrees. Does that sound correct?
I'm not sure if it's quite that much, but you do lose temperature. Yes, you do.
And so you should probably refrain from opening the oven too much, which I would gather is a big amateur mistake.
Yes, and then if you are going to open it, you want to get it closed as quickly as possible. So while I'm checking my fish, I'll take it out, close the oven, do what I need to do, and then go back to
So don't leave the oven oven just gaping
Yes.
Set it right away. Okay.
Okay, and so my fish is actually in a good place. Okay, you want to be very careful, in particular with halibut. Halibut can overcook very quickly. Okay, and so you can see how the fish is turned opaque all the way through, even though we didn't flip it. So this fish is cooked beautifully, nice and moist. Now, what you will see is when I go to flip it over, we have a beautiful golden.
Nice.
And that's why you don't want to flip it over. That's also why the temperature of the oven is important, to be at a high temperature, because it's continuing to sear in the pan while cooking through at the same time.
Sure.
Okay? So we're going to take the fish, we're going to move it over to the back. I'm just going to slide back over and have our and I'm just going to transfer the fish over to a towel. Okay.
On cooking shows, I often see this kind of chefy thing where a chef will take the liquid from the pan and repeatedly dunk it on whatever is in the pan. Is that a technique?
It is.
That is good for any kind of.
It's great for fish. We actually could do that here. You have to be careful as you're doing it. It continues to cook,
Sure.
But it's almost like basting the whatever you're cooking in fat. And so usually what we would do is we would take, when the pan came out of the oven, we would take some butter, add it to the pan with maybe like some garlic and some herbs, and we would continue to baste that fish with that hot butter, which would kind of coat it. It would give it some flavor, and then it would finish cooking it. So, if we took the fish out where it was 80% cooked, we could cook it the other 20% on that stovetop by basting it in that hot butter. Or if you didn't want to use butter, you could use like a hot oil or something like that. Almost very similar to how the tiki dog is done in the beginning, where the duck's baited with hot oil to help clean wrap and like that.
Okay. So again, if I weren't constantly interrupting you, I have to imagine that time would be of the essence of this fish. Once it's here, you want to get it to the guests as soon as possible.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Luckily for us, our hot plate here has a heat lamp at the top, and then the metal plate is also heated as well, so it gives us a little bit of extra time.
Sure.
Okay? So we're going to take a nice spoonful of our mixture.
Do you shop at the markets around here, or does your staff shop in the markets around here for the local stuff?
We do go out to the markets. We don't necessarily shop every day. The markets aren't quite large enough to maintain or to be able to supply us with everything we need on a daily basis. But we do shop in the markets, especially if we're going to have like a small intimate event. I'll go and see what's in the market that day and kind of tailor our menu around those particular items. What we do also do though is that the vendors that we work with also work with the local farms, and so they let us know at the beginning of the week, hey, this is going to be great. I'm going to have beautiful radish coming up this week, or I'm going to have great asparagus, or the mushrooms are going to be fantastic. And so we'll kind of tailor our menu around that, or try and fit it in as much as possible. And then we'll also craft our specials around what's great in the market as well.
Great.
Just to kind of bring this dish together, I'm going to take just a little bit of truffle oil, and I'm going to add truffle oil just to the top of the fish, just to give it that sheen to the top. And I'm going to take that fish and set it right on top. And from here, we'll finish the plate off.
Okay.
Some of the water pepper. Okay. So this is just a buttermilk and truffle vinaigrette that we make to be sauce for the plate. And so I'm just going to add just a little bit of that around to the plate. Okay. And then we're going to take some micro watercress. Okay. We're going to take a little bit more of that truffle oil just to kind of tie everything together. Very lightly dress it.
Is it possible to overdo it with the truffle oil?
Yes, it is. And that's why we try and keep it fairly light. We really want to just get like the essence of the truffle oil,
right,
more so than the flavor. And then what we'll do is we don't necessarily cover all of the beautiful fish that we cook, but we just want to add that little pop that kind of brings the dish all together. Okay. And so what I did was I just put the greens over the slight imperfection in the fish, where the fish would kind of separate a little bit. Just a little plating trick. And there you have our roasted halibut with lentils, asparagus, mushroom, and carrots.
Fantastic. That is beautiful. Another beautiful dish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chef. So again, if you're just joining us or you've stuck with us, I want to say some thank yous first to Bogana for filming this whole thing. Again, I'm at the Conrad New York Hotel with Executive Chef Gerron Douglas.
It was a pleasure.
Also a dad, as you probably heard during our segment. I invite you to come watch the rest of this. It's going to be in 2 parts now since our camera did overheat a little bit. But once again, Chef, thank you very much for
It was a
having us.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you.
Take care. Have a great day.